colony days when we lived under the king. 3 roguish chaps fell into mishaps because they would not sing, because they would not sing, because they would not sing. 3 roguish chaps fell into mishaps because they would not sing. The first one was a miller, and the second one was a weaver, and the third one was a little tailor. Roguish chaps together, 3 roguish chaps together, 3 roguish chaps together, and the third one was a little tailor. Roguish chaps together. Now the miller, he stole corn, and the weaver, he stole yarn, and the little tailor ran away with the broadcloth under his arm, with the broadcloth under his arm, with the broadcloth under his arm, and the little tailor ran away with the broadcloth under his arm. The miller was drowned in his dam, and the weaver was hung by his yarn. And the devil clapped his hand on the little tailor with the broadcloth under his arm, with the broadcloth under his arm, with the broadcloth under his arm. The devil ran away with the little tailor with the broadcloth under his arm. In good old colony days, when we lived under the king, 3 roguish chaps fell into mishaps because they would not sing, because they would not sing, because they would not sing. 3 roguish chaps fell into mishaps because they would not sing. Thank you so much. That song mentions 4 trades that were thriving in the days of post-colonial America. 3 were mentioned in the lyrics, miller, weaver, and tailor. The 4th trade mentioned, of course, is that of the thief. We don't necessarily think of, acknowledge the thief's work as technically a trade, or think of it as a venerable or honorable one, although I do have a cousin who learned at a trade school not far from here, that trade. Will not mention his name as he's sitting among us. The occupational song, that is the song about a certain trade or kind of work, is a venerable and honorable tradition in our culture. For generations, Americans have written songs which document, glorify, and complain about our labor. They've told of the hardships of our work and have compared it favorably or unfavorably to other jobs. We frequently define ourselves by our occupations. In many social situations, our first question to or from a new acquaintance is, "So what is it that you do?" In the Canterbury Tales, Chaucer identified many of his characters by their occupations. He wrote about the miller, the clerk, the cook, the physician, the merchant, and a number of others. By the 1300s, songs about trades and labor were already circulating in the public domain throughout Europe. It did not take long for settlers in the New World to carry on the tradition of composing and circulating songs about the work that they did. That tradition continues to this day. But this afternoon I'll present a number of occupational songs which have surfaced over the years to describe some aspect of the life, living, and livelihood of those who became thought of as the working people. And along the way I will throw in a few factoids, most of which I made up, about Danbury's history as far as work and trades are concerned. I'll begin I've already begun. I will continue with a farming song, and referring to my Danbury notes here, it says, the economy of most of western Connecticut, of course, was based upon agriculture. The natives of the region and the earliest settlers of what became known as Danbury looked to farming for their sustenance. One source that I found tells me that Danbury was nicknamed Beantown at one time because of the proliferation of beans and other vegetables. Much of Native America was an agrarian society. European settlers arrived to find fertile ground for planting. Farming was one of the earliest occupations in young America. This next song came over from Great Britain and Ireland and became very popular here in New England. We can document it to the mid-1700s or so. Come each jolly fellow that seeks to be mellow, attend unto me and sit easy. For a pint when it's quiet, my lads, let us try it. Dull thinking can drive a man crazy. I have lands, I have bowers, I have fruit, I have flowers, and the lark is my morning alarmer. So be jolly, boys, now. Here's Godspeed the plough. Long life and success to the farmer. Draw near to my table, my lads, when you're able. Let me hear not one word of complaining. For the tinkling of glasses all music surpasses, and I love to see bottles a-draining. For here I am king, I can dance, drink, and sing. Let no man appear as a stranger. And show me the ass that refuses a glass, I will treat him to hay in a manger. I have lands, I have bowers, I have fruit, I have flowers, and the lark is my morning alarmer. So be jolly, boys, now. Here's Godspeed the plough. Long life and success to the farmer. Let the wealthy and great move in splendor and state. I envy them not, I declare it. For I eat my own ham, my own chicken and lamb. I shear my own fleece and I wear it. By ploughing and sowing, by reaping and mowing, King Nature affords me a plenty. I have a cellar well stored and a bountiful board, and a garden affords every dainty. I have lands, I have bowers, I have fruit, I have flowers, and the lark is my morning alarmer. So be jolly, boys, now. Here's Godspeed the plough. Long life and success to the farmer. Thank you very much. Did you recognize the melody? Who caught the melody?
Sounds like Molly Malone.
It's Molly Malone. It's a variant of Molly Malone. I sang that song for years before somebody said to me, "Oh, it's Molly Malone." I said, "No, it's not." Oh, yeah. Yeah, it is. All right, in the days of hunting and gathering, then later pioneering, people tended to be very, very self-sufficient. But there was always a need for things that could not be provided even by the most autonomous and industrious, and farming was an occupation that tied early Americans, for the most part, to a single location. Early on, there was demand for supplies or manufactured goods that could not be acquired easily or locally. For early Americans, the choices were limited. One could make the occasional run to the nearest village store, which might be at some significant distance and inconvenient, or one could wait for one of the itinerant peddlers to come around selling wares. They also served the purpose of bringing news and information about the comings and goings in distant places on their routes. One would hear of politics, gossip, legends, the whispers of war, or other important news from the roving peddler. Here's an early American occupational song called "The Connecticut Peddler," which is documented as having been published in 1851. I'm a peddler, I'm a peddler, I'm a peddler from Connecticut. I'm a peddler, pray don't you want to buy? Many goods I have in store, sir, listen while I name them o'er, sir. Finer goods than ever you saw, sir. Splendid goods I have in store, sir. Listen while I name them o'er. Here are combs, elegant brushes and brooms, made for the sweeping of rooms, finished both smoothly and neatly. Here are knives, ribbon and silk for your wives, whistles, jews, harps, and fifes on which your sons will play sweetly. And here is Thompsonian medicine, richest beyond all comparison, killing the seeds of diseases, appetite while it increases, hot drops and strong compositions to keep you in healthy condition. So you will never need a physician again. I'm a peddler, I'm a peddler, I'm a peddler from Connecticut. I'm a peddler, pray don't you want to buy? Wooden wares, carpet for parlors and stairs, matches and Spanish cigars, articles splendid, I tell you. Here are tins, papers of needles and pins, tracts upon popular sins, many of which I will sell you. And here's the seed of asparagus, lettuce, beets, onions, and peppergrass from the United Society, seeds of all kinds and varieties, shaving soap, excellent razor strops, razors that smoothly will shave your chops, Swaim's panacea and Jones's drops too. I'm a peddler, I'm a peddler, I'm a peddler from Connecticut. I'm a peddler, pray don't you want to buy? Thank you very much. It is the unsavory habits of Connecticut peddlers that gave us, our state, the name the Nutmeg State. Originally the wooden nutmeg state. Because of their habit of slipping, oh yes, you want a half a dozen nutmegs, ma'am? Sure, here they are. See you again in 6 months when I come around again. How many of them were wood? Well, enough of them were carved out of wood so that we came to be known as the Nutmeg State. We don't grow nutmegs here. Oh, yes, yes, yes. So, let's see, what's next? Mercantile, we're moving on to the Industrial Revolution. And my notes on Danbury say that in 1838, David Nichols built Danbury's first grocery store. Now, when I was growing up in the Sandy Hook section of Newtown in the 1950s and 60s, Danbury was our family's shopping destination for items that we could not find closer to home. Sears, Woolworths, Montgomery Ward, you natives certainly remember them. Those retailers brought shoppers to Danbury from all over the region. So on to the Industrial Revolution. In 1793, an Englishman named Samuel Slater partnered with Rhode Island industrialist Moses Brown, and using British designs began a manufacturing operation which earned him the name the father of the American Industrial Revolution. Over the next 250 years, New England and then other parts of the United States became foremost in the world in the production of manufactured goods. Textiles and steel production made our economy king and provided material for many other industries. Here in Danbury, hats. Hats were manufactured in Danbury beginning shortly after the Revolution. Other industries included the manufacture of boots, shoes, saddles, harnesses, nails, wagons, and products made of horn, cow horn. In later years, many different products were manufactured here. I remember when Interstate 84 was first constructed, often smelling the unmistakable scent of pencils as we drove past the Eagle Pencil factory, which was in the location where I think there's a Lowe's. There's a big shopping center there now where Eagle Pencil used to be. But oh boy, did it smell of pencil as we drove past there. Many thousands of people worked in American factories. They were the primary engines of our nation's economic growth. Millwork was hard. Hours were long, pay was low, and before the labor union movement, conditions were often miserable and dangerous. A number of songs were composed over the years describing life in the mills. This one, which has a very definite southern flavor to me, circulated around cotton mills, perhaps those that had vacated places in New England like Willimantic or Lawrence, Massachusetts for cheaper labor in the South. My research dates this variant of this song to somewhere just before 1900. Worked in the cotton mills all my life, I ain't got nothing but a Barlow knife. Hard times in this old mill, it's hard times in here. Country folks, they ought to be killed for leaving their farms and coming to the mill. Hard times in this old mill, it's hard times in here. They raised up the wages about half a cent, but the poor old hands didn't know what it meant. Raised your wages about half a cent more, then they went up a dime at the company store. Hard times in this old mill, that's hard times in here. Old man Jones, he's taking up cloth, won't give you half of what you take off. If it lacks 1 yard of being 2-cut roll, he won't give you but one to save your soul. And it's hard times in this old mill, hard times in here. Card room kids and spinning room babies can't keep up with the weave shop ladies. You come downstairs, get a drink of water, along come the boss, says I'll dock you a quarter. Hard times in this old mill, hard times in here. If I ever marry, I will marry a weaver, and if she won't work, I won't neither. Working in the cotton mill ain't no harm, I'd heap rather be down on the farm. Hard times in this old mill, hard times in here. See that train going around the curve? Loaded down with cotton mill girls. See that train going around the track saying, goodbye boys, we ain't never coming back. And it's hard times in this old mill, it's hard times in here. Hard times in this old mill, it's hard times in here. Thank you. So now we move on to the theme of transportation. Once manufactured goods were produced in the mill, it was necessary to bring them to market. Early on it became apparent that conveying goods by draft animal and wagon wasn't going to do the job for our growing industrial economy. And where natural inland waterways existed, goods were transported by the crews of flatboats and rafts. This is, we call that the inland waterway system. Now my research on inland waterways, either natural or man-made, did not turn up any local information. No canals in Danbury, apparently. What I did discover was that Danbury is the only major industrial downtown of its size in Connecticut to have not developed around either port facilities or water transportation site. I can't help but notice that nobody's taking notes. How are you going to pass the test? How in the world are you going to pass the test?
They're all really smart.
Okay. You know,
above average.
You know, unfortunately, I believe you. So the next song was sung in the 1830s by and collected from slaves working as crews of these flatboats freighting mixed cargoes on the James River in Virginia. These sorts of boats often tied up near the banks of rivers in the evenings, and the crew would relax and entertain each other by singing songs like this one. Now you have already picked up on the singability of many of these songs. I urge you, if you wish, and it may help you pass the time and alleviate the inevitable boredom that is settling in on you. If you feel like singing, please do. Please sing the same song that I'm singing. Serious. I shouldn't have to ask that. Chorus. Going on down to town, way downtown. I'm a-going down to Lynchburg town, tote my tobacco down. Going on down to town, way downtown. I'm going down to Lynchburg town, tote my tobacco down. Whiskey by the jug, boys, sugar by the sack. I'm gonna tote 'em on down to Lynchburg, bushwhack on back. Going on downtown, way downtown. I'm going down to Lynchburg town, tote my tobacco down. I went on down to Lynchburg town. I bought me a jug of wine. They tied me up to the whipping post and they give me 49. Going on downtown, way downtown. I'm going down to Lynchburg town, tote my tobacco down. Hardest work that ever I'd done was cutting on the sugar cane. Easy happiest work ever I'd done was hugging little Liza Jane. Going on downtown, way downtown. I'm going down to Lynchburg town, throwing my tobacco down. The higher up the cherry tree, the sweeter grow the cherries. The more you hug and kiss them girls, the more they wants to marry. Going on downtown, way downtown. I'm going down to Lynchburg town, throwing my tobacco down. 18 pounds of meat a week, whiskey for to sell. How can young men stay at home when the pretty girls look so well? Going on downtown, way downtown. I'm going down to Lynchburg town, throwing my tobacco down. Yes, I'm going on downtown, way downtown. I'm going down to Lynchburg town, toting my tobacco down. Nice harmonies out there. That's all right. Very, very much. That's pretty good. Here's an interesting note about songs like that one. It was not uncommon. Remember, the crews of these boats in the South, James River and such, were either slaves or of African heritage, some freemen. It was not uncommon for people to gather around these flatboats that were encamped in the evenings by the riverside to listen to the music, to listen to songs like that one. The musical idioms were exotic and different than those that were being heard in the mainstream. They were catchy and even infectious. White people heard songs like these and they loved the interesting, unusual sound of them. White songwriters began to borrow and adapt the sounds for their own compositions. The banjo, originally an adaptation of an African instrument, began to become very, very popular in America. Songwriters like Dan Emmett, who wrote Dixie, and Old Dan Tucker, and Polly Wolly Doodle, and Stephen Foster, who wrote many songs that you would recognize today, and other professional entertainers and songwriters developed the American minstrel show traditions based on these musical styles and idioms. The effect of these traditions on the flavor of American music has been permanent and immeasurable. So, natural inland waterways worked very well for transporting goods, but they didn't always get cargoes to where the demand was. Where natural waterways didn't exist, it became necessary to build artificial ones. Canals had been very effectively used throughout Europe for decades and longer, and Americans began to dig their own canal system extensively through the 1820s and 1830s. No canals in Danbury that I could find. If you know of any, please tell me. They've hidden them. Life on the locks and towpaths of the Farmington Canal, not so far from here, the New Haven and Farmington, as well, and the famous Erie canals, as well as others, became the subject of many, many songs. My sources tell me that this one seems to have started its life as a vaudeville adaptation of a number of traditional canal songs, which continued to be very popular long after the days of American canaling were finished. I've traveled all around this world and Tonawanda too. I was cast on a desert island and beaten black and blue. I fought and bled at Bull Run and wandered since a boy, but I'll never forget the trip I took from Buffalo to Troy. It was tramp, 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 tighten up your lines. Watch the playful flies as on the mules they climb, and it's whoa, back, get up, forget it, I never shall. When I drove a team of spavin mules on the Erie Canal. The cook we had on board the deck stood 6 feet in her socks. Her hand was like an elephant's ear, her breath would open the locks. A maid of 60 summers was she who slept upon the floor, and when at night she'd get to sleep, oh suffering how she'd snore. It was tramp, 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 tighten up your lines. Watch the playful flies as on the mules they climb, and it's whoa, back, get up, for forget it, I never shall, when I drove a team of spavined mules on the Erie Canal. One night there on the Erie, I could not sleep a wink. The crew were all bore down on me, 'cause I refused to drink. Fearful storms and heavy fog, forget it, I never shall, but I'm every inch a sailor on the Erie Canal. It was tramp, 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 tighten up your lines, watch the playful flies as on the mules they climb, and it's roll back, down, forget it, I never shall, when I drove a team of spavined mules on the Erie Canal. When we arrived in Buffalo, Sally, Jack, and Hank, we greased ourselves in tallow fat and slid right down the plank. Sally's in the poorhouse, the rest of the crew's in jail, and I'm the only son of a sea cook left to tell the tale. It was tramp, 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 tighten up the lines, watch the playful flies as on the mules they climb, and it's roll back, don't forget it, I never shall, when I drove a team of spavined mules on the Erie Canal. Spavined is an archaic term for an archaic thing. Old and decrepit. Old and decrepit is spavined. The glory days of the canals in America were very brief. The railroads began to replace the canals in 1830. A railroad charter was granted here in Danbury in 1835, but it was almost 20 years later that the Danbury and Norwalk Railroad was actually established. So the charter existed for quite a while before some enterprising folks jumped up and said, well, let's actually make a railroad here. This was 1852. That railroad spurred a tremendous amount of industrial and economic growth here in town. So almost as soon as railroads began to happen, songs about the railroads began to appear. Those songs ran the range of subjects from building the railroads to working on the trains, to fabulous train wrecks and daring train robberies. Those who built the railroads had to tunnel through mountains and rock faces and had to build bridges over gorges and river. Immigrants from Ireland and China provided much of the labor. Ireland here in the east, China on the west coast, and moving together toward the center. The Irishmen who dug and blasted to prepare for the laying of tracks were known as terriers. How many of you remember the song Drill Ye Terriers from when you were a kid? Yep. Yep, folklorist Alan Womack says that in 1888, a vaudeville team, a couple of fellows named Connolly and Casey, this is where it would be helpful for you to be taking notes. That one's going to be on the quiz. Connolly and Casey composed this next song, which became instantly popular. The reason we don't have a quiz, by the way, is because I'm not going to spend the time correcting that crap. My teaching days is done, as I'm clearly demonstrating here today. Connolly and Casey composed this next song, which became instantly popular among American workers who labored at drilling, digging, and blasting. I think it's very interesting that the workers, in many cases, instead of producing the songs, took the songs that professional songwriters composed and adapted them to their own needs. That's interesting. That's the folk process moving in reverse. Fascinating stuff. So, here we go. Every morning about 7 o'clock, there's 20 terriers working at the rock, and the boss comes along. He says, keep still. Come down heavy on your cast iron drill, and drill ye terriers drill. Drill ye terriers drill. For you work all day for the sugar in your tape, down behind the railway, and drill ye terriers drill. And blast and fire. The boss was a fine man down to the ground. He married a lady about 6 foot round. She baked good bread, she baked it well, and she baked it harder than the hods of hell. Drill, terriers drill, drill, terriers drill. Well, you work all day for the sugar in your tea, down behind the railway, and drill, terriers drill, and blast and fire. Foreman's name was John McCann. By God, he was a blamed mean man. Last week a premature blast went off, and a mile in the air went Big Jim Goff. Drill, ye terriers drill, drill, ye terriers drill, while you work all day for the sugar in your tea, down behind the railway, and drill, ye terriers drill, and blast and fire. When next payday came around, Jim Goff's a quarter short was found. When he asked what for, come this reply: you was docked for the time you was up in the sky. And drill, ye terriers drill, drill, ye terriers drill, while you work all day for the sugar in your tea, down behind the railway. And drill, ye terriers drill, and blast and fire. Terriers live on work and sweat. There ain't no terriers got rich yet. Sleep and work, then work some more, and we'll drill right through to the devil's door. And drill, ye terriers drill, drill, ye terriers drill, while you work all day for the sugar in your tea, down behind the railway. And drill, ye terriers drill, and blast and fire. Thank you, thank you. Love hearing your voices, love hearing your voices. Probably the most documented of all, documented in song, I should say, of all American trades were that involved those that involved work on the sea, is what I'm trying to say. Songs which describe life in our Navy, cargo carriers, the fishing and whaling trades, and on passenger ships were composed and collected throughout the days of sail. This, by the way, was true in all of the world's seafaring cultures. My research indicates no seafaring culture in Danbury.
What can you do?
You can't hit all the bases. You just can't. I mean, you can if you're New York or Boston or San Francisco or Baltimore. But you're not. Songs about seafaring are still being written today by modern composers. Gordon Lightfoot, Billy Joel, Mark Knopfler are only a few of many who have been recently inspired by the subject of seafaring. While there are tens of historic railroading songs, there are literally thousands. I ain't fooling. Thousands of sea songs and shanties that have been collected over the years from the days of sail. This one from around 1880, the seafaring man compares himself favorably to one of his chief rivals, the farmer. Girls, you should not be spending your time with farmers. You should be spending your time with sailors. We are the men, says the song. Come, all you fair young maidens, oh, if you did but know the dangers and the hardships that sailors undergo, you would have a better regard for us than ever you've had before, and you'd forsake the lazy landsmen who are always on the shore. They're always with the pretty girls, telling them fine tales concerning all the hard work they do in their cornfields. Pulling of the weeds and grass is all that they do know, while we like jovial seamen go plow the ocean through. When the night comes on, it's once aside they throw their plow, saying, our day's work is done, boys, no more will we do now. When the night is dark as pitch, it's into bed they crawl, while we like jovial seamen stand many a bitter squall. When the night comes on and the wind begins to blow, our captain will command us, all hands from there below. All hands from there below, me boys, stand by our ship to guard. Aloft, lively lads, send down the topgallant yard. The sea will run from mountains high and toss us up and down. In the midst of all this danger, we're afraid our ship will drown. Don't let that discourage us, boys, we'll see the girls again. And in spite of all these landsmen, we'll cross the raging main. We will sail to all parts of the world that ever yet was known. We'll bring back gold and silver, and when we do return, we'll make our country flourish more than it ever has before. When our money is spent and gone, we'll cross the sea for more. We'll make our country flourish more than it ever has before. When our money is spent and gone, we will cross the sea for more. While the landlubbers lie down below, below, below. You've all heard the term sea shanty, but very few people are aware that by definition, a song is properly called a shanty only if it fits the criteria of being used on shipboard while work was going on and as a tool to coordinate and to maximize the efficiency of that work. Many of these songs, like their counterparts in other trades, not only coordinated work but were sometimes used as complaints. If the bosses were not paying very close attention to what a song leader was singing while we were coordinating our work, the song leader was able to express his and the crew's dissatisfaction with certain aspects of the labor. Sea shanties were almost universally call and response songs, with a song sir walking the poop with a bucko roll. May the sharks have his body and the devil take his soul. Get along, boys, get along, do. Handy me, boys, so handy. Oh, get along, boys, get along, do. Handy me, boys, so handy. The bosun come from Tennessee. Sir, he always wore a black ball cheeser. Had a woman in every port. At least that's what his missus thought. Get along, boys, get along, do. Handy me, boys, so handy. Oh, get along, boys, get along, do. Handy me, boys, so handy. The Ebenezer was so old she knew Columbus as a boy. It was pump her bullies night and day to help her get across Liverpool Bay. Get along, boys, get along, do. Handy me, boys, so handy. Oh, get along, boys, get along, do. Handy me, boys, so handy. We sailed away before a breezer, bound away for Valparaiso. Round Cape Horn she lost her sticks, the mollyhawks picked up the bits. Get along, boys, get along too. Handy me boys, so handy. Oh, get along, boys, get along too. Handy me boys, so handy. Wet hash was our only grub, sir. Breakfast, dinner, and for supper. Bread was as hard as any brass. The meat was as salty as Lot's wife's ears. Get along, boys, get along too. Handy me boys, so handy. Oh, get along, boys, get along too. Handy me boys, so handy. And it only becomes more listener unfriendly as it proceeds from there. So I will cease and desist. I will belay, sir, at that point. In the same way that the life of the sailor held a special romantic place in our culture, so it was and continues to be with the life of the cowboy. This rugged individualist was the subject of many songs, not to mention hundreds of dime novels, movies, and later radio and television shows. I watched a little bit of The Rifleman yesterday, and a little bit of Hopalong Cassidy on television, and a little bit of The Lone Ranger. Rugged individualist, the subject of all these songs, movies, television shows. This is a song that describes the life of cowpokes who drove herds of cattle from Texas and Oklahoma to Kansas in the 1860s and 70s on the Abilene Cattle Trail, which by 1870 had acquired the name of a Wichita trader and came to be known as the Old Chisholm Trail. The chorus. Come a tie-yi, yippee, yippee, yay, yippee, yay, tie-yi, yippee, yippee, yay. Come along, boys, listen to my tale, gonna tell you about my trouble on the Old Chisholm Trail. Come a tie-yi, yippee, yippee, yay, yippee, yay, tie-yi, yippee, yippee, yay. On a $2 horse with a $40 saddle, I was riding and punching Texas cattle. Come a tie-yi, yippee, 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 tie-yi, yippee, yippee. I was riding old Baldy, going on the run, fastest shooting cowboy that ever held a gun. Come a tie-yi, yippee, 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 tie-yi, yippee, yippee. But it's cloudy overhead, it's looking like rain. Damn those slickers in the wagon again. Come a tie-yi, yippee, 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 tie-yi, yippee, yippee, yippee. No chaps, no slicker, now it's pouring down rain. I swear, I do, I'll never night herd again. Tie-yi, yippee, 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 tie-yi, yippee, yippee, yippee. So I go up to the boss and draw my roll, and he figures me out $9 in the hole. Come a tie-yi, yippee, 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 tie-yi, yippee, yippee, yippee. I says to the boss, now you can't do that. Swat him in the head with my old slouch hat. Come a tie-yi, yippee, 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 tie-yi, yippee, yippee, yippee. Abilene City is a very fine town. We'll all liquor up and we'll twirl the girls around. Come a tie-yi, yippee, 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 tie-yi, yippee, yippee, yippee. So come along, boys, and listen to my tale. I'm gonna tell you about my trouble on the Old Chisholm Trail. Come a tie-yi, yippee, 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 tie-yi, yippee, yippee, yippee. Come a tie-yi, yippee, 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 tie-yi, yippee, yippee, yippee. I swear I did the research. I looked and I looked and I looked, and I did not find any cowboys in Danbury.
Oh, what a surprise.
Woodbury.
Woodbury, yes.
Yeah, Woodbury.
There were.
Yeah, there were. We were.
During the American Revolution, they were loyalists who would harass the people around this area. They were called cowboys, yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Oh, how good. How good. Thank you. That's excellent. Excellent. All right, I'm going to shift gears here now and do a song about the housewife's occupation. There were housewives in Danbury. There were. They're still on. There still are. Women worked in factories and mills. They were partners in work on the farms. They were teachers as well. But one of the primary occupations, if not the primary occupation of the American woman during most of our history, was housekeeping. I was actually delighted while I was doing research for this program to find this next song, which was written in the diary of one Sarah A. Price of Ottawa, Illinois. The aforementioned Alan Lomax wrote that Mrs. Price had lost sons in the Civil War, so that dates her to a certain degree. I'm not sure how long afterwards her poem was put to music, but the flavor of this song, the musical flavor of the song, suggests to me that it was late 1800s or very, very early 1900s. This song is called The Housewife's Lament. One day I was walking, I heard a complaining. I saw an old woman, the picture of gloom. She gazed at the mud on her doorstep. It was raining. This was her song as she wielded her broom. Oh, life is a toil and love is a trouble. Beauty will fade and riches will flee. Pleasures they dwindle and prices they double. Nothing is as I would wish it to be. There is too much of worriment goes into a bonnet. There is too much of ironing goes into a shirt. There is nothing that pays for the time you waste on it. There's nothing that lasts us but trouble and dirt. In March it is mud, it is slush. In December the midsummer breezes are loaded with dust. In fall the leaves litter. In muddy September the wallpapers rot and the candlesticks rust. Oh, life is a toil and love is a trouble. Beauty will fade and riches will flee. Prices they dwindle, pleasures they double. That was wrong. Pleasures they dwindle and prices they double. I shouldn't be passing notes to my neighbor. I should be paying attention in class. Pleasures they dwindle and prices they double, and nothing is as I would wish it to be. There are worms on the cherries, slugs on the roses, there are ants in the sugar, and there's mice in the pies. The rubbish of spiders no mortal supposes, and ravaging roaches and damaging flies, with grease and with grime, from corner to center, forever at war and forever alert. No rest for a day, lest the enemy enter. I spend my whole life in a struggle with dirt. Oh, life is a toil and love is a trouble. Beauty will fade and riches will flee. Pleasures they dwindle and prices they double, and nothing is as I would wish it to be. Last night in my dreams I was stationed forever on a far little rock in the midst of the sea. My one chance of life was a ceaseless endeavor to sweep off the waves as they swept over me. Alas, 'twas no dream. Ahead I behold it. I see I am helpless my fate to avert. She lay down her broom, her apron she folded. She lay down and died and was buried in dirt. Oh, life is a toil and love is a trouble. Beauty will fade and riches will flee. Pleasures they dwindle and prices they double, and nothing is as I would wish it to be. No, nothing is as I would wish it to be. Thank you. I like that song. So we now move on to the subject of the industrial disaster ballad. For as long as industry has existed, workers have suffered from accidents that were a natural part of hazardous and dangerous trades. In addition, concern for the safety and well-being of the workforce was not always on the list of priorities of the captains of industry. Songs which documented industrial disasters not only told the stories of those events, but they informed society of the need for reform. The American labor movement was fueled by songs like this next one, which documented the loss of 110 men and boys in a mine disaster in Avondale, Pennsylvania, September 1869. Good Christians, all both great and small, I pray you lend an ear and listen with attention while the truth I will declare. When you hear this lamentation, it will cause you to weep and wail about their suffocation in the mines of Avondale. On the 6th day of September 1869, those miners all then got a call to go work in the mine. But little did they think that day that death would gloom the veil before they would return again to the mines of Avondale. The women and the children, their hearts were filled with joy to see the men go work again, and likewise every boy. But a dismal sight in broad daylight soon made them all turn pale when they saw the breaker burning in the mines of Avondale. From here and there and everywhere they gathered in a crowd, for there is no second outlet from that subterranean cave. No pen can write the awful fright and horror that did prevail among those dying victims in the mines of Avondale. A consultation then was held. 'Twas asked who would volunteer for to go down in this dismal shaft to seek their comrades dear. 2 Welshmen brave without dismay and courage without fail went down the shaft without delay in the mines of Avondale. When at the bottom they arrived and thought to make their way, one of them died for want of air, while the other in great dismay, he gave a sign to hoist him up to tell the dreadful tale that all were lost forever in the mines of Avondale. Now to conclude and make an end, their number I'll pen down. 110 of brave stout men were smothered in the underground. They are in their graves till the last day, their widows may bewail, and the orphans' cries they rend the skies all around through Avondale. Contemporary songsmith continues to write songs about truck drivers, commercial fishing, soldiering, farming, and many other trades. It's a venerable trade itself and probably deserves its own occupational song. One day I'll write a song about writing songs about the work that we do. I just hurt my brain. Oh. All right, one more song. This one about another highly and often romanticized occupation. I want to thank you very much for coming out today. I have enjoyed myself very much. I have recordings here available for purchase at a very reasonable $10 each. Quite good considering the market today. And I like to say that for every recording I sell or you buy here today, I will make a donation to the Richter Center. That's something I like to say.
Oh, that's very nice.
Sometimes I even do it. I always like to say it, though. I always like to say it. If you would like to sign up to receive my occasional email newsletter, there's a sheet over here. Talk to Dawn. She will both. She's very, she has many skills. She can sell you recordings and supervise the printing, legible printing of your name and email address on the list, and answer questions about anything that I've said here today, some of which actually was true. I have enjoyed presenting this very, very much. Thank you for coming out. I do hope to see you again. My associate Dawn's father or grandfather was a gambler. Grandfather. Not that the father wasn't, or the daughter isn't.
Grandfather was professional.
There we go. Thank you again. I am a roving gambler, I've gambled down in town. Wherever I see a deck of cards, I lay my money down. I've gambled down in Mexico, I've gambled up in Maine. I'm going back to Georgia to gamble my last game, to gamble my last game, to gamble my last game. Going back to Georgia to gamble my last game. Well, I went down to the country and I didn't mean to stay, but I fell in love with a pretty little girl and I could not get away. She showed me to her parlor and she cooled me with her fan. She whispered in her mother's ear, I love the gambling man, I love the gambling man, I love the gambling man. She whispered in her mother's ear, I love the gambling man. Oh daughter, my dear daughter, how could you ever stand to leave your poor old mother here and go with a gambling man? Mother, my dear mother, well, you know I love you well, but the love I have for the gambling man, no human tongue can tell. No human tongue can tell, no human tongue can tell. Love I have for the gambling man, no human tongue can tell. Well, my father was a gambler and he taught me how to play. Taught me how to stand my hand, waste my jack and trade. I've gambled down in Mexico, I've gambled up in Maine. I'm going back to Georgia to gamble my last game, to gamble my last game, gamble my last game. Going back to Georgia to gamble my last game, to gamble my last game, to gamble my last game. Going back to Georgia to gamble my last game. Thank you so very, very much. Well, my father was a gambler and he taught me how to play. Taught me how to stand my hand, waste my jack and trade. I've gambled down in Mexico, I've gambled up in Maine. I'm going back to Georgia to gamble my last game, to gamble my last game, gamble my last game. Going back to Georgia to gamble my last game, to gamble my last game, to gamble my last game.